So until now, we have basically let CSS Grid decide where to place our items in a completely automatic way, simply following the source HTML code. However, sometimes it's important to manually place elements in a grid cell other than the predefined one. And so let's now learn how. And let's start by turning this one here off, set this here back to 1FR, and actually let's turn this height back on. So this makes it look a little bit better. And also here I will increase the gap because that will make it easier to visualize what we are going to do now. Okay, but now let's go to the topic of this video, which is about how to place a certain grid item, like this one here say, into another grid cell, like here for example. So into a grid cell that was not its default one. All right. And going back to that terminology of grid cells and all that, let me actually show you the very helpful dev tools that we have for CSS grids. So here you can actually see many of the terms that I mentioned before in the theory lecture. So you have the numbered grid lines, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have the gutters, and you also can see the grid cells. Well, let me turn one of them off, like this one here. So to turn this on, we need to actually click this here. And so here you can see that basically the intersection of these two grid lines here creates this cell. So right now this cell does not have any grid item, and that is perfectly okay. Then here you have the so-called gutters, which we can create with the gap. And yeah, so these are then the tracks, so the row tracks and the 4 column tracks like this, right? But now we are actually interested in these numbered grid lines here, because they will allow us to place any grid item wherever we want. So let me show you how. And for that, I'm leaving it turned on here. So let's actually use that example I mentioned in the beginning. So placing this grid item here inside of this grid cell. So basically in this position here. So let's select it. It is element 8. So the class is this one, L8. And we want it placed here. And so that is column number 2 as visible from this grid line, and row number 1 as visible from this grid line. So let's start actually with the column. So we can say grid column. And then, as I said, that's column number 2. And then we can also specify the end, basically. So we say that it should start at column number 2 and end at column number 3. So right here. So if I save this now, then you see that it did actually move to the second column. Now this created then an additional row here, but let's fix that now by moving it here to row number 1. So again, turning these on, now to grid row number 1, 2, 2, right? And keep in mind that these two are properties that always need to be used on grid items, right? So these here, like grid template columns, rows, and gap, are used on the grid container, while these are used on grid items. But anyway, let's put it here exactly where we want it. And there you go. Now it is right here, exactly where we placed it. And now let's do the same with this one here. And I want to place it down here. So let me select it first. So that's element 2. And now I want you to pause the video and write the code to, again, place this item exactly in this cell. So do you think you can do that? Hopefully you can, and I see you here in a minute once you are ready. Okay, so let's once again turn on the visualization here, and then let's write our code. So that is grid column 1 to 2, right? So it should start here and go here. And then as for the row, it should go from 2 to 3. So grid row 2 to 3. And there it is. Beautiful. And actually, if the second value here is just one more than the first, we can omit it. So we can do this, and it will still be in the same place. However, what do you think will happen when we specify a second value that is actually not just +1? So we had this, but what if we did this? So what do you think it is going to look like now? So let's save that. And, well, now this item spans across 2 cells. So let's again bring back. And so, yeah, this is exactly what we specified. So column 1, 2, 3. And so therefore, now it fills these 2 cells here. And so this is the trick that we use in order to have an item span across multiple grid cells. And of course, we could use any other number here, like 4, right? And so now it spans across these 3 cells. And notice how I just said 3 cells, right? So sometimes we might not want to do math here. And so instead of this, we can actually also say span 3. So in other words, instead of specifying the final value of the grid line, we can simply say start at 1 and then span across 3 cells. And so this should now look exactly the same, and it does. So let me keep that other one here as well. So as a reference, basically. But these two are exactly the same. All right. And if we say span 2, well then, as you can expect, it will only span across 2 cells. And then like this, which is quite unnecessary, but just to see it, now we are back to filling only 1 cell. Now, of course, we can also say span 4, and then it will go all the way from one side to the container of the other one. And let's actually keep working with this situation where we want one grid item to span all the way to the end of the container. So in some situations, we might not even know how many columns there are in a grid, or we might simply not want to think about how many cells we need to span. And so in those situations, there is a very nice trick that we can use instead of manually spanning. So let me again just copy this and turning it off to keep it as a reference. All right. And so if we simply want one element to span all the way to the end, we can use -1. So you see the result is the same. And this still works, of course. For example, if we started this at 2, so then it would start at 2 and it would span all the way to the end, which is -1. And now let me quickly show you why this trick works, which is actually a really great trick, a really great idea. So you see that these grid lines go from 1 to 3 to 5 here at the top of the grid. However, at the bottom of the grid, if you see it, then they go from -1 to -5. So basically in the opposite direction. So what this means is that each of these grid lines actually has 2 numbers. So this one is not only 4, but also -2. And so this one, which is the last one, is not only 5, but it is also -1. And so this is why the trick works. So we start at 1, which is here. So this grid line is called 1 and -5. And so we can just use this one. So 1. And then we go all the way to -1, which again is this last one here. And so this is why this trick works. Okay, and Finally, of course, the same thing. So spanning also works for rows. So let's experiment maybe with this number 6 here now. So L6, and let's leave the column where it is. So of course we can, if we want, only manipulate one of them. And so let's say grid row. So right now it is at 3, but let's say we want it to go until 6. Well, that's not what I intended. So I think I said 3, not 4. So yeah, this is what I was looking for. So this doesn't look very special, but actually what happened was that a new row here was inserted. Let's just do this until 4. Okay, so now you see that a new row was inserted. So 3, then here for some reason we're missing the 4, but then there is 5 all the way at the end. So this is maybe not such a good example, but we can just experiment a little bit more with this. So if we just briefly turn off this one here, then we have some more space so that we can span this one here. So this number 8, we already have it selected. And so if we say, for example, 3 here, then as expected, it will span these 2 grid cells now across these 2 rows. And the same works if we say -1, then it goes all the way to the end. Or if we say span 2. Now, if we said span 3, then it would create just another row down here. So just like we saw it actually happening before. Okay. But let's actually turn it off again. I will again just leave it here as a reference. Let's turn this one back on because I liked the way that looked. And yeah, so I think I showed you enough now about this topic, but this is worth experimenting a lot with. So I hope that you have some time to maybe do that now. So you can select different elements here and then see what happens when you place them in different cells and do some spanning. And you can even try to overlap them. So basically placing different grid items in the same cell. And you will see that that actually works. So have some fun with that. And then I will see you back here for our next lecture.